Hello, I'm Eagle Gardens 1 on Instagram. And this is fucking talking shit. This is episode 131. And I have the pleasure of speaking again tonight with John Davis, Indra. Always a pleasure to have him with us. How you doing tonight, Indra?
And not bad for a sharecropper.
Nice.
I'm feeling better
How's your
because
day?
I just got my 99 plant exemption a few days ago.
It's always a good day.
So one more, yeah. I'm gonna grow a significant amount because I want to juice it every day and take it. So you got to grow quite a few plants in order to be able to juice it all the time. And I'm not going to sell it. Nothing for sale or anything like that. I'm just going to, a lot of what I'm going to do is pull my Afghani and Vietnam, Cambodia seeds out of cold storage and put them in a warm, sunny spot in a pot of 50% rabbit shit and 50% other goodies that we use in our secret formula. Also, there's probably about, I don't know, 1,000 earthworms in the pot with the rabbit poo. So everything's getting aerated really well. And nowadays, what we do in order to grow it so it's got a huge root right off the bat is we have like stovepipe sections that we can add to the bucket to make it deeper. And we fill it in with more rabbit poo and root tone until we get a plant that's 4.5 foot long root. And we take the case off of it and go out, put it in the ground, and then when it starts to show itself, we carry on to the letting it grow about 4 feet or so. And at that point in time, we get out the gloves, razor blade, alcohol, and the special tape you can buy at garden places that they use on apple trees and cherry trees when you want to graft one branch onto the tree. You can get the special tape that'll prevent infection being carried over or mold or anything. And we split the stock down the middle in about a 400-gallon pot. And then we split the other two. We split it so it's 4 equal quarters. And we lay the 4 quarters out and coat it with powder root tone. And we wrap up the center part so nothing can go bad with it. There's a lot of pictures of that, of the outcome of that on Instagram and on my YouTube channel. You can see we get these 300 buds that eventually come on a plant like that, and they're all about 2.5 feet long, and they're all as thick as your forearm, and they all look identical. It makes a big dome. It looks like, from the air, it looks like a football stadium dome, because the plant's not growing the main stalk anymore. It's just growing branches. So that saves it a lot of energy. It's not trying to grow up now. It's just trying to produce these branches, which will all go to flower. And that's what I intend on doing this year again, because if you do that right and you've got good genetics, you can get a coaxial plant to give you anywhere, depending on the kind of plant and so forth, between 12 and 20 pounds of dry material at the end. And I developed it back in Mendocino, way back when, and the reason was we were growing huge amounts, and the sheriff was trying to get a handle on it. And so they came up with this 26 plants. You could have 26 plants. You went down and registered at the sheriff's station, took the chance on telling them where you're going, so forth, so on. And they gave you 26 of these little wrist kind of things. One you could put on each plant. And if they did show up to inspect you, if that was all you had, they would just come in, say hi, and be on their way. If you had more than that, they'd cut those down and possibly arrest you too, but usually just cutting them down. And the Mendocino sheriff was a little less insane during those times. And so we had to go from 600 plants to 26 plants. And so that's how I came up with the method of trimming. I call it the Maxi Trim. It gives you the biggest yield. We've tested it against all the other ways that friends showed us and different people did it. I mean, we were living right there in Mendocino, right on the coast, and everybody back up in the area, we knew everybody that was growing. And so you got to see a lot of different techniques and ideas. And this particular one stuck in my head kind of permanently. It's the only way I would do it anymore, because you don't get a 20 or 30 foot tall plant. You get a 7 or 8 foot tall plant, but it's 25 feet around, and every bud is the same. All those branches produce these superb buds. I mean, I used to have a guy who would come and buy it, and he was always flabbergasted because he would come and buy 100 pounds, and every single bud from pound 1 to pound 100 was identical. And at that time we were growing Trainwreck, and it was really excellent. Original old Trainwreck before that. But anyway, he was always amazed that it always looked the same. We always had a good relationship with him. He had a private plane. He'd fly in, land there on the coast, and then fly back to Texas with it. But anyhow, now I've got an exemption from the state. It's all legal. So I'm going to grow my 99 plants and juice it every day. Maybe I can add some years onto the end of this old carcass. 75 now. And my younger son, Benny, when he was quite young, we used to go to the ashram in India all the time. And one day, Benny went and sat on the guru's lap, and they were like old pals. I mean, he ran up and hugged him, and this guru told us Benny was our telephone to him. We could ask him questions, and he would get the answer from the teacher and let us know. So one of my other kids asked Benny, hey, how long is Dad going to live? Because I don't want to lose Dad. And so Benny went silent for about 10 minutes, and he came back and he said, around 122. And so the only thing that really worried me about that is getting stash at 120. I mean, where the fuck? I got enough problems getting it now. You know, I haven't been anywhere for 4 months, and so I'm smoking roaches from 2 months ago. For a while there, someone in Eureka was giving me concentrates as a thank you for having put them in the concentrate business. Pretty much everybody who's in the concentrate business is there because I put them in business. And you can go on Irwood and see the original post I made in 1998. You've probably seen it, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I have.
No. That was
Yes.
that was very much long after I discovered the process in 1969. But guess what? No internet in 1969, and or 1979 or 1989. You know, I mean, there was some bulletin boards, but I wasn't gonna go onto a bulletin board and put anything out in those days. And I remember the way I put BHO out was I was in Switzerland when I did it, and I was sitting there one night, and I said to Johnny, "Hey, what do you say we turn the entire planet on?" He was like, "That sounds cool, Dad. Let's do it." And so I was on a cactus board where they were discussing how to take San Pedro and extract mescaline from it. And a lot of big, long, lengthy formulas and techniques. And I was reading through it. And this is one of those boards that in the day the internet had just come on. And the feed on the right, the chat, was going 100 miles an hour. I mean, you had to hit the space bar to stop it to read something if you wanted to read something, because there were just so many people, because it was such a new thing, and hell, everybody was going for it. And so I typed in all these methods with the acid and big sloppy messes and everything are entirely unnecessary. And fucking whole board just froze. You know, the chat stopped, and the moderator said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, you know, I know for a fact that everything active is in the outer 1/8 skin on this cactus that we're talking about. Nothing in the middle, none of the center stuff has any psychoactive material in it of measure. And so you can do one of two things. You can dry it and strip the outer 1/8 off with like a power cutter or a power grinder. Or there's a place online called Compass Peru. That's COMPASTERU. You can go on there and order kilos of this outer part of the cactus as a incense, and it's chock full loaded with mescaline. And uh, I uh, I used to get like 2.2 kilos of it, not pounds but kilos. And they sell a 900-gram package and a 2.2 package, and you easily get 3.5 ounces or so of mescaline crystal out of it, and it saves you all the trouble of going through all the bullshit of growing and stripping and getting rid of the needles and all the rest of that horse shit. You can just order it. In Peru, they got machines and they go up in the mountains where it grows because they view it as a noxious weed, and they cut them down, and they know that there's a market for it, so they strip it, powderize it, and sell it. And they import it into the States for you, and it's perfectly illegal because it's an incense powder. But anyhow, uh, yeah, you know, I used to get that so that I would have some around for when I felt like having mescaline. And so I wanted to tell the board that they were wasting a lot of time getting cuttings and growing it, and so when you can really just order this. And so then they said, "Well, that's great that we can get it." And I said, "Yeah, and then all you got to do is put it in a pipe, you know, get yourself some butane, stick it in one end and fire it down through the other, and you get this mescaline acetate there. And it's wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Well, the fucking thing froze again. There was anything. It just sat there for like 5 minutes. Nothing was going anywhere. And then all of a sudden, the moderator guy came back on, and he says to me, "Does this work with anything else, sir?" And I said, "Yeah, it works with pot. You get pure honey oil out of it by doing the exact same process." Boom, that fucking thing exploded with activity after that. And the guy came back on, he shut it down, and um, he says, do you understand the implications of this? And I said, yeah, I'm turning the planet on. I've been getting high this way since 1969, and I figured it was about time that I shared it with everybody so that the fun could begin. I wanted to take it away out of the hands of the authorities and put it into the hands of the people. And so I listed it on Earwood, the exact how to go about it. And then as the time went by, I also updated it and said, here's how you don't blow yourself up and things like that. And then in the late 1980s, I got a business partner who said, let's patent it. So I did. The 1998 patent was the first patent that used the solvent as a temperature mitigator in the process. So what that means is we would take the oil and gas, recover the gas out of the oil, and when that gas was hot, put it in a jacket around the lower chamber, which would heat the oil up to the exact right temperature to make it give off gas at an exact perfect rate. And so the patent examiner in Geneva said he went back 90 years to try to find somebody else did that, and no one did it. He said it was inventive and original. Those are the two things you're allowed to say about a patent. You can't say any more than that. That's sort of like jumping up and down and screaming, and you know what I'm saying? That's the equivalent of yahooing for a few hours on a megaphone. And he said he used both of them in my patent. And then he suggested that he hoped that I had a good hiding place because the solvent recovery industry is going to take a hit and there's going to be a lot of people unhappy with you. And I said, well, you know what? I'm open to licensing deals. And yeah, I mean, you know, I was there in Switzerland. I built a pretty big machine, a 200 pounder, while I was in Switzerland, and we did a lot of work with it there, and we did a tremendous amount of work for the perfume companies, Robertet and Firmenich, you know, people that make Joy perfume and Chanel Number 5, and we would extract all their basic oils that they used for that. And in fact, we came back to the States and built a factory there in Kansas. And we did almost 15,000 extractions at that factory over those years. And my first patent was cryogenic collection of oil using butane in cold temperatures and the cryogenic collection of terpenes. So I was way the fuck out. Nobody was talking about terpenes. And at my factory in Kansas, when we were extracting 3,000 pounds of roses, we would get 10 gallons of terpenes in the vessel. And I mean, we had to learn how to deal with it because it would make us silly drunk. The first time we extracted a big load of lavender, when we opened the chamber up, we were getting it out and scooping it out, and Johnny started laughing, and I said, "What's so funny?" He said, "I don't know." And then I got the giggles, and pretty soon we had to run outside and sit down, and we were dizzy and laughing our asses off. We all that happened was we were breathing in all these terpenes from this lavender that we just freshly extracted. And we were grinning so hard that the next day my face hurt from smiling. And so you definitely can get high off lavender, but at the right dosage level. I mean, we found that out for sure and for certain. Same thing with the roses. And so for what we would do if there was any suspicion whatsoever that it was going to be a potent oil, we had special masks and oxygen lines that ran to them, and we would handle it that way so that we wouldn't. I mean, we did some smoked jalapeno peppers, and when we opened the chamber up, it canceled your ability to breathe. Literally, I would try to take a breath, and it was just like, there was no way my body was accepting a breath. So we ran outside, and our mucous membranes were drooling, or drooling spit. We were bent over, coughing and sneezing, and two mice ran out of the building and ran right between our legs and out into the field too. So it definitely was a powerful terpene that went through the whole building because it cleared everything out of the building, and it taught us a lesson. We never did that again without these masks and gloves and just about a suit, to protect yourself, because the vapor from some of the more potent things like that was very, very incredible to experience. At that place, we literally extracted every seed, every nut, every bark, every root bark, every flower, every fungi, all the things that you can imagine the perfume companies were after. We extracted there. And it was an amazing adventure, because the bottom chamber, you can see it's a 900-gallon chamber on my YouTube channel, and it's huge. It's bigger than a Volkswagen. It's got two 6-inch wide ports on it so that you can look into it and see what's going on. And there's lights that light up the interior. And over all those extractions, we would watch carefully, because when you're pulling the gas out of the matrix, out of the oil, at the surface of where the gas separates from the oil, right at that point, crystals will be born if it's pure oil, or if it's sometimes even if it's two fractions, you'll get two kinds of crystals that'll be born. And they'll be like waves of these crystals that'll be born like in the surface from the bubbles, and you'll see them form and then melt back into the oil, and as more bubbles come out, more would form, and you have to watch that. 15,000 different extractions, and out of those, maybe 12,000 were all separate. The ones we did over and over again were big amounts of things like auto rose. We would get that from Romania in a refrigerated freezer container. They would fly it into the airport in Kansas City and truck it to us, and we would put it through our nitrogen grinder, which, by the way, I was using liquid nitrogen to grind things up back in the 1980s and 90s. And I've got this huge grinder because my partners are Swiss, and they do real estate. And so one of the things that they got one time was a big giant macaroni factory. And so I went there and looked around, and I bought these screens that shake, automatic shaking screens, through about 10 levels of screen. They do that to collect the flour to make over again when the macaroni gets busted up. But it also was very useful towards the idea of shaking trichromes out. That's not ultimately what we used it for, but we got one of those. And I got this big grinder that we could pour the roses frozen into, and they would just come out powder. That powder would go directly into the extraction chamber, and we would extract it. Well, it was, I mean, they were still frozen. They were picked and flash frozen. And so I was, extracting flash frozen fresh plants back in the late 90s. And a couple, 3 years ago, when I started telling people to do that with pot plants, at first met with a lot of resistance, but now everybody's sort of doing it. They're not all doing it the right way because they're putting it in freezers and freezing it. And this is like the third best way to go about it. Grinding under liquid nitrogen and then straight into the extraction chamber is the absolute best way, because everything you ground up is still at around minus 170, minus 180. And so then when you also, like our system, control the temperature of the butane, because we feed it through a vessel with a big coil in it that has some liquid nitrogen in it. And at different places, the coil can be raised and lowered to achieve different temperatures for the gas. And so we use that gas, plus we have a special computer nozzle that makes the gas extremely fine droplets, and it showers it down in the chamber. So instead of the soaking paradigm, which everyone uses in the pipes, we don't do that. We have this continuous shower going down. And while that's happening, you get this phenomenon of adiabatic cooling amplified, because we are cooling the gas down to near liquid nitrogen temperatures. And so it freezes the biomass, and it can be controlled so that the first yield you get is terpenes, because you freeze everything, including the oil in the upper chamber, by adjusting the temperature of the gas. You get the terpenes out, harvest those, you warm the gas up a little bit, and then you go for the oil. Depending on what you're doing, I mean, someday you might decide you want to do a nut or another flower or something in between extractions, because our system cleans the gas in between extractions, because you're not going and buying gas with our system. Our system, it retains all the gas. You use it, and it gathers it back out of the system, puts it back in the storage tank. And so it's got a very fine filtration system set up so that you don't get any cross contamination. You can do garlic one day, roses the next day, marijuana on the third day, and there's no fear of contamination between them. Those are all the things that I thought was important when I started doing this, and I still think they are important, but maybe that's just me, eh?
Oh no, very important, very important. How hard is it to source liquid nitrogen?
Our system, the top chamber is a cone. And so, because it's a cone, every single thing that's extracted in the chamber goes down to the bottom. I mean, they have these pipes that everyone uses, and Science 710 makes a thing where you can cram them about right full, because the problem with pipes is if you've got one spot that's crammed in harder than another spot, the gas will go around it. And it's a problem because depending on how wide that spot was, you don't get any yield out of that part of it. It's called channeling, and it happens all the time. But anyway, our system, we don't have to pack them. You put whatever you're going to put in it, 60, 90 pounds. In a bag, you lower it in, close it up, push the on button. Someone else or you sets the touch screen to the parameters you want. And then when you hit set, there's just two buttons there. There's a red one and a green one. And if you're having someone else work it for you, that cuts down stupid human tricks a lot because the machine opens and closes all the valves. I never trusted people to open and close the valves because people are doing extractions are also stoners. They tend to forget what they're doing as things carry on. And, you know, that's a source of a lot of human error. And so I made the whole thing computer controlled. And I like it. I think it's an excellent way of doing things. But enough of that. Got any questions?
Not so far. I'm more learning than anything. I mean, some of this process is way over my head, to be honest with you. It's more of a learning experience and getting some of this knowledge out for them. Some of those that can utilize it a lot more than myself. I'm just a grower. I mean, extraction is something that I only dream about at this point. You know what I mean? Enjoy my bubble hash, but I leave the actual chemistry extraction to people better suited myself and have more time and uh, just capable of getting the right equipment. You know what I mean? Right now, I'm more into growing the plant and busy in that level. But as far as the extraction goes, that's something I just dream and enjoy learning about still.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I got into the extraction end of it. Well, I got the epiphany about it actually in Vietnam, and uh, it kept getting more and more of my attention as time went on, and I started realizing that it was valuable. And like I said, I got a partner, Swiss partner, who said, "Yeah, it's entirely valuable, and let's patent it." So the very first patent I wrote passed. They gave it to me, and the second one I wrote in 2009 passed. They gave it to me, and I just got another notice for one that I just wrote on how to extract terpenes with no lipids in it. It's going to pass. I'll have that one, and yeah, some other nonsense, other stuff that I'm interested in that I do, and electronic stuff. But that's neither here nor there. I
What's exactly
enjoy
in the
keeping my
lavender
brain.
that would make you so lappy like that in a extraction form? Concentrate.
Well, I was sitting there in Vietnam back in '69, and I made my first extract, and I looked at it, and I knew then. Uh, I used a thick pen. I stuffed some Thai stick down in it, and I had a Ronson lighter refill, and I squirted that through it, and there was this little puddle of red bubbly material on the saucer, and it was so pretty, and it smelled. You got to remember it was from Buddha stick, Thai stick, which was already excellent, excellent pot. And I mean, you notice exclusively got stoned off of a few tokes. And we passed it. I wrote a couple of joints and soaked the paper in it and passed it around the hooch. And everybody sort of got wax from the can. And nobody knew what it was. And I didn't really make any more for anybody there. I kind of kept it to myself. And I thought about it.
We lost your audio, Indra. I still can't hear you. You may have to maybe stop the video. It could help the audio. Do you guys hear me? There you go. Are you there, Indra?
I am. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, sir. I can hear you perfect.
It says here that your network bandwidth is low.
Is that my end?
But it says here, it says Eagle Gardens network bandwidth is low.
Just have to roll it, sir. I can turn my video off.
My bandwidth is up.
Set it up. So, what was that? All the things you've extracted. What was the oddest thing you've extracted? And for what reason?
Well, pretty much all the extractions we made were because somebody was paying us to make it. So that would be the reason. But we've made some pretty odd ones. I think the really stinky ones that were, well, I'll tell you the most dangerous one we made, and nobody told us in advance that it was going to be dangerous, so it wasn't very pleasant. But the factory has these huge squirrel cage fans out back that change all the air in the room every 22 seconds when they're on, and you turn them on when you're making extractions, and they take the air out of the lowest point in the room in the center of the room, and the room the floor is a 2% slope from each corner to the center where the collection point is at. And so the worst thing that happened was that someone gave us a load of mustard seed to extract the oil from, and it was very caustic and very nasty and scary. I was pretty angry at the people who gave it to us for not warning us that it was a caustic scenario. And I charged them what back in the day was a lot of extra money for doing it. But I mean, now it doesn't sound like much. I charged them $5,000 to clean up the equipment and all that, in addition to the price we charged for the extraction. So that was the most horrible one that we did. And,
Which one
a lot of
had
the
the
things that we
surprising?
did.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Indra.
No, what were you saying?
I was going to say, out of all the extractions, were there any that did have surprising effects that you didn't see coming? You extracted something that you didn't necessarily see coming your way, kind of like the lavender. You know what I mean? When you got into it, you guys were all smiling. Is there something other than that you found that medicated you, if you will, you didn't see coming?
Well, a lot of the extracts previous to us over the last couple hundred years were all either alcohol or kerosene or hexane or steam distillation. And so a lot of the oils um, the were the way they were because of the way that they were extracted. An example would be German chamomile oil, which was known for years and in some places still is.
Lose Indra. You there, Indra? I can hear you, my friend.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
You can hear me now? Did you say you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Anyway, yeah, I can hear you. I was saying as an example, German chamomile oil for many years was blue. And when we extracted it cryogenically, what we discovered was there's two fractions, one very heavy refrigerator white, very viscous fraction, and one very light, uh, like water, very light yellow fraction. And when you put the two of those in a test tube and heated them up, it turned blue. And so the guy at the place in Germany where they hired us to make this extraction called me up, and he was in tears. He said he had been working on separating those two chemicals for years and had no luck. Once they're together because of the heat, and the heat caused the reaction, and the reaction is what made them blue. And when we extract it cryogenically, no heat, so therefore we got two separate fractions, and they remain separate in the. You could pour them in a tube, in a test tube, and they would remain separate until you heated them up, and then they'd turn blue. So that happened a few hundred times, but over the years, with different extractions that we made, that turned out to be multi-fraction oils that were in various plants. We did a lot of lot of different trees and barks. We did Acacia cibarium, which puts out an oil very similar to cinnamon. It's not cinnamon, but they use it to flavor cereal and stuff now because cinnamon trees take a long time to grow. In China, the bark's been stripped off of them for years, and it takes 20 years to grow one with the bark on it. But Acacia cibarium grows in a year, and so they would cut the whole tree down and strip the bark off it and send that to us. And that oil was some pretty potent shit. You wouldn't want to get in your eye. If they put that in a spray can and sprayed it in a bear's eyes, that bear would never come near you again. You know, because Johnny and I both got a tiny amount in our eye, and it was like 2 days before it actually gave up and went away, that we were blinded by it. So much tougher than pepper spray. You know, I had the pepper spray in the eye, was mild by comparison to cinnamon oil. You still hear me?
I can still hear you. I'm still here. I'm still here. Well, do have
I
a few
got
chats.
your picture.
Yeah, I cameraed off when you weren't able to camera. And without it, just kind of it's awkward for me to be the center of attention when you talk. So I cameraed off, to be honest with you. First question that has come out of the chat is what are some of the most yielding strains for extraction that you found?
Most yielding strains for what?
For extraction, what are some of the most yielding strains you found so far? Is there a
Talking
difference?
cannabis now?
Yes, sir.
Talking cannabis, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Uh, you know, it's not so much the cultivar, but it's the cultivator. It's how it's done, what it's fed, and how it's fed, and how you've taken care of it that produces more or less oils. One of my favorites for about 8 or 9 years was the original train wreck because we would regularly get between 16 and 18% yield from it of this fabulous oil that um, we used to sell to all of the dispensaries from San Diego up in the early days when we first got out here. We would extract that train wreck. We had a friend who was growing in Mendocino, and there was lots and lots of it. And so that gave a very good yield. And that was just the trim. When you were doing the buds, you could even regularly see 20 or 21% yield on that particular genome of train wreck. But as the years have gone by, there's been a lot of Kush plants that have come and gotten extracted that were pretty loaded. They were in the same vicinity. But once again, you know, somebody can grow the very same plant next door and end up getting a 15 or 10% yield, and you can grow it and end up getting a 20% yield. The plant is going to respond to the conditions that you give it. For me, for all the years we grew, I used to carry a sitar out to the garden every morning and spend a couple of hours playing. And my wife, Annie, took a video one morning that I didn't know. I was just sitting out there playing the sitar, having a good time. And after a while, I was done. And I stopped and put the sitar in its case, got up to walk away. And then what Annie pointed out to me was all the while I was playing, all the plants, all the cannabis plants were all leaning over towards me. And when I got done playing and stood up to leave, they all got straight again. We're pointing back up straight. So I had this, after I watched that video that she made, I start realizing more and more the kind of relationship that we have with them vibrationally. And they only live for a certain amount of time, and they want to be adored, and they want to give you everything you want, but you have to give them everything they need. And so it can be a good relationship if you don't look at them like they're a business, and you look at them with a different attitude, a different understanding of who and what they are. And, they've been with us since the beginning, since day one that we appeared here. Uh, there's a cannabinoid system in our bodies, and how did that happen? Gee whiz, I think it's a planned deal. Um, I've said over the years that in the Bible they have the story about manna. That there's a machine that gives out manna, and that's how people ate until they learned how to farm. So, but it leaves something out in the telling of that story. And how did they learn how to farm? From eating manna off of the machine? And that wasn't very well addressed. And so when I read that, I thought, you know why? Because it was marijuana is what it was. And there were seeds, and the seeds they got oil and protein from, and the leaves, the uh, World Food Authority said that the plant itself is the most nutritious plant on earth, pound for pound. And so I think that's what it was. It wasn't just mana, it was marijuana, and it was the seeds and stuff. And I believe that this whole journey until now has been, obviously, it's a teaching plant. It's teaching us tremendous amounts of knowledge if we're open to it. And it'll even form a loving relationship with you if you allow for it, and you're giving enough to feel advanced enough to do that and not feel silly about it. I had a teacher in India that said, I had a teacher in India that said, love. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I was just thinking to myself as you were speaking there about the relationship with the land. I can't help but wonder as you build that relationship with the plant, you take cuttings from it. If that relationship passes on with the cutting, or reincarnated with the cutting, uh, almost pre-programmed with the cutting, if you will, or do you form a new blend with each individual
Look,
plant?
when a doctor delivers a baby, that's not the end of the deal. Many times, the doctor treats the child its whole life, and even when the child multiplies, the doctor will help that one be born. And I think when you're taking cuttings, because of the way plants are programmed to use things like being cut off or chewed or eaten or knocked down, they have a survival mode that they go into. And so I think that, of course, the relationship's there because you're going to now take care of it and nurse it back into life. It's just like if you take a stray dog in and start feeding it and taking care of it, pretty soon it's going to love you. So you just have to look at the plants like that. Cuttings are just little babies with a lot of potential, and they want to be loved. You got to love them into existence. Everything good has to be loved into existence. All the bad shit is like somehow carries that all on its own. People hurt each other, wars. I've been to a war. I was in Vietnam, let me tell you. Major sucks. Really bad scenario. And saw things that I still can't shake, can't get out of my fine. Made some wrinkles in my brain that I'd like to iron back out again, just for having had to see them. I of course, uh, I don't go crazy about it, and you know, the VA is kind of a horrible place for veterans in a way. Every time you go there, the nurse from the psychiatric ward will come out in the lobby and ask, is there any Vietnam vets? And if you raise your hand, she'll come over and offer you the whatever the current happy pill that they make. One of the happy pills, there's a bunch of them that they hand out. And you tell her, no, thanks, I'm good. And then she tries to sell you on it, and she'll tell you, well, you know, a lot of the veterans are taking this and they're really happy with it. And you always have to tell her, look, for some people, maybe it's okay. But imagine if down the road you discover that this stuff causes cancer and you stop giving it out. And then all of the unhappy that it was suppressing suddenly becomes available to this person, and this maximum unhappy. And you never can tell. You could get people who would come down here with a damn machine gun to express their unhappy because you gave them happy pills. So I prefer to, for me, a happy pill has to be like MDA, mescaline, or somewhere along those lines, psilocin pill. Those would be happy pills. The other mood altering drugs that the government passes out. I don't know. You read all the time, you know, about a guy who took it for 5 years and everything was hunky dory, and then one day he cut his wife and kids up and buried them somewhere, and now he's living in a camouflage something he dug up out in the forest because he went off his rocker because of some of the horrible things that they put you through in Vietnam. I was very fortunate. I was a combat field medic. I don't know. Maybe you could say that was fortunate, maybe not. But what that meant was I wasn't finding myself shooting at people. I was busy taking care of people who got shot. And there was a lot of that running around, ducking and taking care of people. And, you know, well, some of it was bad because there was nothing you could do for the person except be with them while they died. And that was all bad because people lay that kind of responsibility on you when you're 18 and you're there and somebody's dying and come to the end of life realization. And when they get to that point, they sometimes.
Is it me, Indra? Hello? Can you hear me, Indra? Oh, chat. How you guys doing? Okay, with us. Indra, you there, my friend? Can you hear me, Indra?
You hear me?
I can hear you. I can now hear you. Must be a bad connection.
Well, anyway,
tonight, huh? So
Any other
I'm not
questions?
quite sure.
I hope that got answered.
I believe it did. Um, and I want to say thank you for your service, by the way. Because I'm sure there is a lot of things that are stuck with you and a lot of other veterans that can probably never be repaired or repaid, for that matter. So myself, I just want to give you a thank you for your service. Unfortunately, uh, the injuries that still obviously suffer from.
You're welcome. You know, it took 25 years before someone said that to me. I was in
It's a shame.
Chipotle one day, and the guy in front of me had on a Vietnam baseball cap, and it was from 25th Infantry Division, right where I was. And I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, "Hey, were you in the 25th Infantry Division?" And he said, "Yeah, I was. Was it you?" And I said, "Yeah, it was." And about 10 or 12 people in the store turned around and said, "Thank you for your service." And it was after 25 years of not hearing it, it was a very moving moment. And it made a lot come out of me. I just went out and sat in the car and teared out for about an hour because you kind of carry the guilt that the American public laid on the Vietnam veterans. Now, they never accepted, like we were the ones that decided to go to the war. But it wasn't us at all. We were just the marks that the government picked out to send there. And I remember coming back and being at a party, and uh, two guys were arguing, and I thought it was going to be a fight. So I stood up and got between them, and I said, "Hey, this is not the right place for that." And then one of them, the guy's girlfriend, came up behind him and said, "Don't do anything. He's a Vietnam veteran. He could kill you." And that was a big slap in the face. Let me tell you. I was a combat field medic. I wasn't killing people. But this was the picture that they had of Vietnam vets back in those days. I used to hear the story all the time. Yeah, you may have killed kids. Well, you know, the Viet Cong used to put explosives on kids, tie the detonation string, and teach them for weeks and weeks that when they pulled that string, a piece of candy came out. Then he would take them to the local town and set them down with the satchel charge on them and tell them, "Go show the GIs your candy." Kids would walk up to you and pull that string on that satchel charge and blow the hell out of everybody. So after a while, if that happens near you or to some of your friends, you can't not think about it. And when you see people approaching you after that, you get very on guard. It's a good thing there was a lot of good pot available in Vietnam, I gotta say, because without that, things would have been much, much worse. But I used to smoke an ounce a day anyway. You take a carton of cigarettes downtown to Papa San. He would dump
I
all
can
the
only
tobacco out
imagine.
of the cigarettes, fill it back up. Oh yeah, well, you can't imagine, but anyway, uh,
No, I
you
mean
get a
only the
package
part
of.
about smoking an ounce a day to deal with it. That part of it. I the other part of it there, man. I think myself, when you think about war, you think more of like a one-on-one guy shooting back and forth. You don't necessarily think about that sick shit. Like you're saying, like teaching kids to, do something like that. I mean, it's heartbreaking. And it would only take a sick mind to do something like that, a sneaky sick mind to teach a kid to do something like that. And man, I can't even imagine, to be honest with you, uh, some of the baggage you brought home from that, to be honest with you. I hope myself, I never, or nobody I know ever has to deal with that, to be honest with you. Again,
Well,
I said
it
thank you,
wasn't.
but, it's hard to even put into words to the extreme amount of that. I mean, like you said, that was something that a lot of you guys did for patriotic. You wanted to support your country, and that was what you did. That was the avenue you guys chose or had to do it with. But the reasons of what you guys had to deal with and bring back home is incredible. I can't. I can't imagine.
Well, after you're there 6 months and you've been smoking an ounce of pot a day, you get a way different attitude and picture of the fucking war. It's like a whole paradigm shift, and everybody who's getting high realizes that it's just for real. Big contingent of people in Vietnam who are taking acid all the time. They used to hold huge acid parties in their hooch, and everybody would get high. People would get high on guard duty, and it was just it's pretty insane. It was a very wild west kind of place, and if you were there used to be a lot of things happening. One thing that was fairly often happened was called fragging, and if you went out on patrol a lot, you got put on point all the time by some lieutenant or some first sergeant, and your ass was always in the wind, having to be the point man. Occasionally, a grenade would roll into their tent at night and go off, and that would be that. And it happened a lot when I was in Vietnam. You'd hear about it all the time, but I never read about it in the Stars and Stripes or any of the propaganda papers that they gave us there. We never knew that there was any kind of protests going on back in the States about the war. We had no idea whatsoever. The Stars and Stripes would just say, hey, everything is hunky dory and fine. Everybody misses you and hurry up and get the war over with and come on back. And then when I got shot, and they brought me to Tokyo on a flight, the hospital. I got shot in Vietnam. One of the buildings, the main hospital building, 43 maybe, I don't remember now. But it was a real nightmare. When I woke up, I had been shot twice in the belly, and I had a lot of tubes, lines going in, going out, tubes going down my nose and down my throat, up my wee, and they wouldn't give me any water to drink. And for a couple of weeks there, I thought I was dying. I was in hell. This finally one nurse, I told her that, and she's like, "No, honey, you ain't in hell. This is real." She was the first one that gave me really anything to drink. She gave me a wash rag that had some water in it. And about a week later, they let me have a small bowl of jello, which made me feel like I ate an entire turkey at turkey dinner when when I ate the Jello because I guess it's been 6 weeks. I've just been being fed intravenously, and my stomach had shrunk up to a handful kind of thing. And the Jello made me feel like, ouch, I'm full. About an hour. And I wanted some more. And after eating about 20 Jellos, they decided to give me some food. Anyway, not something I would recommend, but it did. One of the things I did before that happened, which I still to this day pat myself on the back for having wherewithal, was I discovered that while you're in the combat zone, your mail goes back directly to your mom and dad's or your sign up address. No customs inspection. And so I started buying these little Sanyo refrigerators. They were about 1.9 cubic feet, and stuffed them full of Buddha sticks and tape them shut and silicone around the seal and wrap them really good and put them in a box and send them back to mom, who put them in the garage for me. And I ended up sending all told about 27 of those. Some of the last 8 or 9 of them were the 2.9 cubic feet model. And so I got a lot more in them. When I got back, my mom was like, well, your stuff's out there in the garage. I mean, you get the place to stay. You need help to take it over to your house. And I was like, no, I got it covered. And there was a lot of seed. It was Buddha stick. And I purposely bought some seeds from Papasan in Bangkok because he had 10-gallon buckets of them sitting around the shop where he was making the sticks. And so I got probably a couple, 3.5, 4 pounds of seeds back over the weeks when I was sending those little refrigerators back. And great stuff too, let me tell you. That's a strain that is one. I'm going to grow it this year, and I might give some people some cuttings because it's absolutely new blood. Nobody's got this period. And I'm thinking that the current lines that we have now could use an injection from 30 years ago, 25 years ago. Some of the Thai seeds, I grew them next to a Blue Dream. And the Blue Dream eventually changed into all mold, and just a big disappointment. And the Thai plant was right next to it, and the Thai plant didn't get any mold or any leaf mold on it whatsoever. And it eventually produced huge buds, which in December I cut down. So I think they're very resistant to mold, and in putting some of that genetics back into the flow could be helpful. Anyway, I'm gonna give it a try. This is gonna probably be my last year that I'm gonna grow big. I feel okay, and at 75, you start slowing down, but I'm gonna give myself a couple of helpers to help me go it the way I want. And then I'll have
There's
this
nothing
huge
wrong with
stash,
that.
and I'll have. Oh,
I mean,
I will freeze. I've got this freezer that I can bring from Kansas. That's got it's cooled with ammonia, and it freezes stuff like hard as a rock. I mean, almost it'll freeze it down to 130, 140 below. And, yeah, why not? That way I could put a bunch of it away as fresh and build myself a small extraction unit just for my own personal use, 10 pounder or so, and extract that stuff fresh. It's such a wonderful flavor when you make it fresh like that from a fresh plant, and everything is in it. You know, when you take a plant, cut it down the same day you cut it down, you put it under the overhead from nitrogen and grind it. And that's what I always did. I would just put the whole plant in a 20 gallon or 30 gallon thing, throw in a quart of liquid nitrogen, and then go after it with a fence post or a baseball bat until it's about 1 inch thick in the bottom of the thing, and then extract that. And it was nice and cold and a lot of surface area because you changed it into powder. So you get maximum yield in the shortest period of time of the best stuff. That's always a good formula to follow. Trust me. I've been doing it for years.
It cracks me up that you say a small 10-pound unit. Just a small 10-pound
Hey,
unit.
what?
To me, that sounds like a big unit. But obviously, when you're thinking in a large scale, 10 pounds is nothing.
Well, look, the one in Kansas holds 2,000 pounds and 2,000 gallons of gas. So, you know, when we're talking very small 10 pounds. And hey, if I can grow 99 plants, 10 pounds is, it'll get a good workout.
Right. Especially
And
with that technique. I mean,
I inhale.
back, when they pulled you guys back to the 26 and you guys were killing it like that, I mean, I can only imagine what you'll be able to do upscaling back up to 99 with the same style.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine if I got just 10 pounds of plant times 99, that's one shitload of cash. And I got a bunch of different seeds. I published a lot of my pictures from last year and the year before online, and people who breed seeds send me 5 or 10 seeds all the time and ask me to grow it and take pictures. And so, yeah, I got a bunch of those kinds of seeds now, and about 25 or 30% of the 99 plants is covered with seeds that I've gotten from different people so far like that. And some of them are quite interesting and quite nice. Some people sent me seeds from faraway places. And yeah, let's see what happens. I treat them all the same. Feed them like a motherfucker. If I dig a 6 foot deep hole to put them in, and I'll put the pie at the bottom of that and strip off all the leaves so that there's a couple inches sticking out and cover it in with rabbit poo, oak leaf mulch, bone meal, blood meal. The earthworms will be in the rabbit stuff, and they'll take care of the oak leaf mulch and keep the plant, the roots nicely hydrated, and it'll put a whole new ecosystem under the plant that the plant will love. And the plant will actually produce stuff on the stalk that'll keep bugs off of it from crawling up it if it's ideally fed and taken care of. Plants only get infected with shit when they're not up to par or they're not as healthy as they need to be. The soil has to be alive. if you're not using living soil, you just you might have a lot of problems. Like all kinds of bugs and molds and stuff on it. But a healthy plant fights off pretty much everything. So I've always had the best luck with uh, feeding them. I mean, I think it's the same with human beings. You feed a kid hot dogs and you feed the next kid next time a good organic diet. Hello. So a lot of people feed their plants hot dogs and they want a certain performance out of it. They've heard that this or that or the other will produce the buds. But look, I smoke a lot of different buds. I try a lot of different ones, and I can pick out the ones that were grown with hot dogs every time. They're harsh in flavor, and mess with the back of your throat first. They might get you really high, but the hot dog recipe that they used on it wasn't that great in my estimation. Organic buds grown using organic materials always produce a wonderful smell, flavor. And, you'd
Do you
have to
think
try
the
to
rabbit
convince
shit
me
that
otherwise.
do you think the rabbit shit
I use rabbit.
brings out some extra? Yeah. Do you think that it brings out some extra terpenes, or do you think it's just explosive plant growth?
Look, the rabbit shit is so little time in the rabbit's innards that it doesn't really produce any nasty things that leaves behind. You can take a fresh turd right out of a rabbit's butt, plant a seed in it, and grow a plant, and it won't burn it. Okay, and so this means that you can load a ton. Like I said, if I do a 6 foot deep hole, the first 3.5 feet or even 4 is 100% rabbit shit. And the place to get it is you find a rabbit farm somewhere in your area where they're producing rabbit meat on an industrial scale. And um, they will have anywhere from thousands to tens of thousands of rabbits, and they will have a healthy outflow of rabbit poo. You can usually go right to it and get the fresh, which is not really fresh. It's been under the cages for like 3, 4 months. There's a billion earthworms in it, and it's starting to, change into just really good stuff. And I used to go just get a couple dump truckloads of that. And the plants love it. Uh, when I first started using it, we were growing 30-foot tall plants all the time that don't grow. I don't grow for tall anymore. I grow for yield. And, I strictly trim it for yield and grow for yield. And I know that you've got to feed them. And so I give those little babies all they can. There's a banquet for them every day, and they like it. I mean, the better you feed them organic. I mean, if you're going to give them a lot of chemicals, they're going to, they're going to taste chemically. So I know probably a lot of people going, oh man, I grow hydro and I grow the best hydro that's excellent. But almost without exception, after smoking hydro for a while, with a bit of a sore throat. So I tend to enjoy outdoor more. Just a wild
Talked to a
nature.
lot of people lately about IPM and spraying things on your plants and later phases of flower, which I'm dead against. But some folks point out, the use of rosemaries and peppermint oils and stuff like that break down quickly, are untraceable in the use in product there. Is that true, or can you actually I believe you can still find that in the end product. Can you find it in the end product, or is it
If, they,
something that is
if they're
breaking down?
spraying, if they're spraying, if they're spraying an oil like that on the plant, I mean, at what point in time do they spray it? You know, are they spraying it before, during, before plucking it, or what? You know, like I said, I'm a firm believer in a healthy plant doesn't need anything sprayed on it. When they're young, I might spray tea, you know, a little bit of rabbit food tea on the leaves on the plant when they're first coming up, but not any time near the flowering time. I don't do that at all. And I'm a believer in that. I mean, you know, there's been points in time when we had 600 plants going, and you know, we had these little four-wheel drive cars that we had to drive around to get to them all every other day or so. And you know, we saw a lot of stuff happen, and I learned what the plants really like. And I learned this trim, they like it, they respond well to it. And so I always trim it that way. And I always feed them with the rabbit shit because it's every time the oil yield is good and terpenes are good. And the plants like the rabbit shit. I've never had a bit of problem with it. In fact, you know, I think it's just the best thing going. It's the best thing you can put on the plant. I don't use bat guano because I object to the ecological damage it does in the caves where the bats live. And the seabird guano, same story. You know, the rabbit poop, it does as good a job, if not better, than anything. And I just keep enjoying it and enjoying it, and I'm never gonna change as long as I can get some good loads of rabbit shit. That's what I'm gonna use, and I use that in our food garden too. I mean, we grow giant stuff. You know, the tomatoes. It looks like a cherry bush. The many tomatoes come on. We had to go out and start cutting them down, make room for the others, or they become one giant tomato because the skin is they're so close to each other. And all the rest of the stuff we grow, I have an orchard. I've got 6 different kinds of apple trees, and I've got 7 different kinds of grapevines, and I've got half a dozen pear trees, and 3 or 4 cherry trees, and I've got all these 8 different kinds of fruit trees, and this is a bumper crop year. The fig tree looks like it's a crazy. It's got maybe looks like 2 or 3 thousand figs on it. They're just everywhere, big clumps of it. Last year, I mean, it was normal, but this year it's some kind of a bumper crop. And we found a old well on the dug it out and it started working fine. Usually we rely on a mountain stream that comes down, but it dries up come summer. And so I took a couple of copper rods and I walked around until I found a place where the underground stream was. And the neighbor dug it out 6 feet down from me. An hour after he was done digging it out, there was 250 gallons in the hole. So I now got that all squared away and a pump in there and filters and it keeps my 10,000 gallons of water constantly full. The good Lord has blessed me to have this place this year and to get the 99 plant exemption. It took me like 5 minutes online with the talking with him, he said, well, I can see right away that from everything you're telling me that you would definitely be the right person to give this kind of an exemption to. So I got it. A little more expensive. It's like 150 to get the 99% exemption. But hey, as long as you're not an idiot and you don't start selling it, you just grow it for yourself in your own stash. It's a fantastic thing. I tend to. I've got a. I've got an old walk-in in Kansas that I could go get, put here on the property, freeze it, and leave it frozen. But anyway, hey, I'm 75. How many more different things can I do, right? Probably my kid said that he got the message that I was going to live to be 122. But I already feel like I'm 122. It's because I got this, titanium cages from Vietnam. My left hip is worn out, and my left knee is worn out, and I need a back operation. And so this year, I'm going to struggle to grow so that I don't have to be without stash again. This whole year, I just haven't had money or ability to keep myself in stash. So I was smoking 3-year-old roaches, and I don't want that to happen again. So I'm going to grow. I see now your smiling face came on. Anyway, anything else?
I had my mic off there while I'm sitting there talking. And, I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with the grow there. I mean, I hope it's not the only grow there. There's no shame in, as you get older, just coining it the way and teaching people as you go along there. I mean, that's a wealth of knowledge that you have there to pass on. And to be able to learn that firsthand from somebody like yourself would be an amazing opportunity, the way I see it.
Yeah, somebody is gonna get to learn how to trim and what to feed and how to feed. When I find myself a couple helpers who aren't greedy and are trustworthy, either that or I might end up just doing it myself and scaling it down to just half of that. It's a lot of work doing that, you know. But I got a neighbor who's got a backhoe thing, and he's, yeah, you can use it, and mix dirt. And there's a not far from here, up the road, 5 miles or so. There's a quarry and a rock and dirt and soil company that has all the really good soil. I went there and I was quite surprised. And one of the reasons that they have good soil is there's a big giant mushroom growing facility nearby, and they get all of the spent mushroom soil there at the yard. They have, they want to bring you a 18-foot long tractor trailer load full of whatever you want. But I've got about 7 acres, and I've got like a 4-acre little valley down in front of the house. So I'm thinking about having someone put it 4 feet deep on there. And I'll start some seeds up inside and get them ready. And then the trimming and get it all set and put it in the ground as soon as it gets warm out. one big last adventure with growing for me.
It should be a fun one. Hopefully you could, I mean, I can't even imagine, to be honest, 99 outdoor plants. I mean, that to me is a dream come true. You know? I could, in a personal, at that, personal grow, grow would be a,
If I get, and you can't see it right now, but I get these people send me these seeds. I got these Terpog Z genetics. They sent me a little bottle of seeds and from a 33 or 34% THC variant. And last year at the Emerald Cup, I got about 100 seeds given to me just as I was walking through the cup by people who were there who spotted me and came out, gave me concentrates and seeds and buds. Always when I'm at the cup, everybody loads me up with a lot of samples. They fill my pockets with free stuff. And it's a great community. People recognize me and give to me. All of them say, "Hey, thanks for giving me a job by inventing concentrates." And I've gotten so many people who at those things. I've had like 40 pounds of concentrate jars when I left the time before last. My pockets were so full, and I had a couple of shopping bags full of flowers that they gave me as I was getting ready to go out. And so those are times of plenty, and they're always enjoyable. I appreciate it. So this year, I want to make my own plenty. The stuff I'm smoking now is smallest and shake. That's pretty much the story until I get my own grown. Can't go anywhere. I've got diabetes and I've got the heart condition. And to me, to go anywhere, the COVID 19, I'd be the worst person. I mean, I'd be a half hour into it and drop dead. You know, I've got the worst outlook on getting COVID 19 of anybody with all the different stuff that I've got. So I can't really go anywhere and do anything. So anybody wants to send me stash, it's box 309, Orleans, California. Anyway, that's pretty much what's going on these days.
I hope there's a few of them that take you up on that for sure. It's legal in California to send it to patient like that. Is in-state transfer.
I've had people from Maine send me vacuum sealed buds that were sealed in a double vacuum seal that were really done well and put in with some other stuff. So I've gotten it from numerous different places. It just matters. All that matters is that you're conscious enough to pack it properly. You know, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Besides that, I don't. You know, somebody sends me something, how can I be responsible for it? You know,
so you mentioned there, the THC content and some of the, strains there. Does that? This may be a silly question, but as an extractor, what does that exactly mean? Is that more what you're going to catch, or is that quality as well?
Say this again. What did you say?
Up there for a second. When we're talking about THC, you said you had like seeds there with some THC content, 34%, possibly better. But when it comes to extracting, Is that just a number of, like, say, a volume like you'll catch, or is it necessarily the amount of THC there, a measured quality as well? Can you have a lower amount of THC strain with a higher terp profile? Is that can that be a better extract, or does that higher THC content necessarily, uh, you know, sway the better extract? Or is that just an amount that you're going to more or less catch increases the amount that you'll catch?
You know, every extract is different. There's really, you can't say, make generalities about it because not only is every extract different, but every person who extracts, every extractor extracts it differently. And so you've got a really wide field of different things. You got people started producing THCA. I remember how amazed everybody was about THCA crystals. I first saw THCA crystals in one of my extracts in 1970. And I had made it and put it in a jar, and I had to go off for the weekend. When I came back on Tuesday or Wednesday from where I was, the jar was covered in the bottom with THCA crystals, and they just really grew huge. And so I had been expecting for a long time to see somebody come up with it, so I wasn't surprised when they did. And a lot of different things. People start talking about terp sauce, and I was like, "Hey guys, terp sauce. You know, when you leave some gas in the oil and put it in a jar to get crystals, what happens is as the gas tries to get out of the oil, it matriculates to the top, and the lighter fractions are affected by this current that the gas is creating when it's leaving the oil. And so the lightest fractions migrate to the top of that jar, and the heavier fractions, which in this case is THCA, fall to the bottom. And when they get there in great enough concentration, like all crystals, they're born because there's enough of them there and it's pure enough. And the stuff that's at the top that they're calling terp sauce is really just the lightest fractions of the oil. And over the years, what I've been able to discover is we started noticing THCV in our extracts a long time ago. And uh, we were getting that and other effects. Our extracts were always looked at cosmically because they were just super smoke and taste and smell. And it's because we were extracting them cryogenically all that time. And that left in the extract alive. And when I was working for Roberte, they asked me to find a way to prove, they wanted to call our extracts living oil. And they asked me to think about how to prove that. And so what I ended up doing was I would take a petri dish and put a big drop of purified water on it and float it in a bowl that was had liquid nitrogen in it. And as the water drop would start to freeze, I would drop a drop of the oil from the extract that we just made on top of that. And so the liquid nitrogen would freeze both of those things very hard. So I would then take it out of that and put it in a box that I had a microscope in with a TV camera on it that was always 5 degrees centigrade. And I would stick the petri dish underneath the camera and wait. And when the oil was thawing out, The very first thing I did this with was sunflower oil. And what happened was a perfect crystalline sunflower appeared in the oil for about 3 or 4 minutes while it was thawing out. And then it changed back in the oil. I mean, it was like a big sunflower flower. It had the petals and the middle part, but it was done in crystal. And so that got me excited right away. And we started extracting a lot of small extracts of different flowers. And we were able to see that each and every time, if we followed the same procedure, that a crystal of the flower would be born in the oil as it thawed out. So after a little while, I thought, well, let's heat that oil up and see what happens if it's still there. So we would heat the oil to 62 degrees centigrade and then put it through the same thing, put a drop on the water, freeze it, put a drop, and then wait for it to thaw out. Well, it just was an ice cube, and we thought it would just be oil. There was no crystal transition phase in it. And it was my theorem at the time, and still is, that when we extract it cryogenically at the right temperature, while it's a living plant, frozen, the way we did, what you're capturing is the actual living energy of the plant in the oil, because you're able to take all the oil out and just leave behind the fiber. And this oil holds still the energy of what made it in this plant and oil, because when we would freeze it and thaw it out on top of this, it would form the flower. And the flower was the expression of the living energy still present in the oil. So I've taken a lot of pictures of that happening through the microscope over the years. And maybe at the end of this year or maybe sometime next year, I'm hoping to put a coffee table book out with pictures of different flowers forming in the oil. And now we're talking with someone who wants to uh, make a documentary out of it. Um, so I don't know. We'll see as things go along. But after that, Roberta called our oils living oils, and they would give us proof of these pictures of the oils forming in the crystal. And I think I was the first one to do that. Still nobody else has actually done it. And,
It'd be pretty amazing.
it's just, it's a path that I.
Every time I chime in, Indra, I throw you off. Oh, sorry. I don't mean to throw you off, my friend. I don't know if you're able to bring up chat, but our friend TCDR is in chat. Listen along tonight.
What?
I said I don't know if you're able to bring up or if you're able to see chat, but TCDR has been in chat tonight. Follow along, listen along.
I didn't get it. TCDR what?
Our friend Patrick from Instagram, TCDR.
Oh, Chase.
Yes, Chase. I'm sorry. Mix that up.
Yeah.
My bad.
TCDR.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah, he's hanging out tonight.
Wave at him, Lord.
Pardon me, Andrew?
Yes.
I'm here. I can. You faded there for a second.
I'm here, but um, starting to get late.
you coming on.
Anytime. I've been
I'm
sitting
actually
alone for
hoping.
4 months. I haven't talked to anybody in 4 months, so I'm dumping on you.
You know, I tried to. I'm hoping, and this is a good time as any to run this by you, because I've spoken to the other party involved. You know, I understand what a treasure that I have on the other side of the Zoom tonight, as far as, well, a great person and a wealth of knowledge. And you've expressed before that you'd like to, get some of that knowledge out there. And unfortunately, as far as when asking the proper extraction questions that would do a lot of good to other extractors, I fall a little short in that category. So I've been kind of asking around. I asked a friend of mine uh, to join us who is very knowledgeable in the extraction field, and I'm actually hoping to help pair you guys up for me, you, and him episode to where he could pick your brain and get a lot more info out there than I can. Yeah, you probably know who he is. You know who Fergroli is? He's an extractor here in Michigan. He does a lot of. Have you ever heard of Fergroli? He's an extractor here in Michigan. Does a lot of work, a little bit of YouTube stuff. Amazing guy and a great extractor.
Good deal.
But I was hoping that one night that I could get him on and help me get a little bit of knowledge out of you. He's a great guy, and he'd help get some more of that great knowledge out there. He'd have some better suited questions as far as extraction goes than I would, for sure. He said it's something you'd be interested in.
Well, here's the thing with people who are extracting, who are using those pipes to extract wood. They're used to the fill and wait and then drain technique. And we don't do that at all. And so I find they ask a lot of questions like, how much can you put in? How much of the load can it take while it's sitting there? These are all irrelevant questions to me because we're pumping fresh gas over every inch of it every second. And so we don't really have to think about stuff like how long do you let it sit? How much of a load can it take up? Because it's never sitting there. It's going through, it's pissing down in a shower that's created by the computer, by the pump, by pressure. It is a real shitstorm in there. And the special nozzle is there. And usually people want to ask me questions based on using pipes. And I did build a pipe one once many years ago. And as soon as I saw that it did channeling, I immediately changed the geometry and went from there. And so, I mean, I'm a little cautious about letting somebody ask me questions who is scounced in that kind of knowledge when that's not what we do.
I don't think you'd get that from Fergroli, to be honest with you. He's a very smart guy. I think he would be more of asking you technical questions, not silly questions like that. To be honest.
Well, as long
I think
as
it would be more things.
he didn't have something to prove.
Oh God, no! God, no! No! It wouldn't be like that at all. Not at all. It would be more of a like somebody. I mean, for Growly, I know for a fact looks up to you as much as I do. So it would be just like somebody that was able to, ask their mentor questions, uh, something more along that lines, and not like stupid off the wall questions that would annoy you. I'm sure it'd be a good intellectual conversation for you both.
Yeah, well, like you said, I don't mind discussing the system that we use all the time because it's finely tuned, scientific grade instrument. And we've been using it since 1998, this configuration. We've never had one accident, or we never lost gas, or had a fire, or had anything rupture, because everything we use is either made in America or made in Germany. And the entire setup that we make is we buy the steel in big flat sheets, 316L pharmaceutical grade stainless steel. And the whole thing is made from that. We cold roll it. The pressure vessels are built by a company that builds stuff for NASA and for the pharmaceutical industry. And every single part on the machine is stainless steel, 316L, all the bolts, all the nuts, all of it. We don't use any Chinese or Japanese. The viewports that look in the bottom chamber are 3-inch thick quartz, annealed glass windows that are, the quartz is made cold and the nickel titanium gripper is put on it hot, and when it shrinks up, it's there forever, and then it screws into the bottom chamber. And then after that, there's a titanium special clamp that we use. So it would have to, the clamp would have to get off and it would have to unscrew to come out. So we've never had a sight vest injury. And by the way, DHO Guard and Precision have had hundreds of sight vest industries problems where they've blown out, torn people's lips and faces up. And I've got about 375 pictures people have sent me over the past few years of accidents from the various other so-called systems that are out there being sold. And we've never had one since 1998. I think it's because we know what we're doing. Versus, like the guy who owns Precision, his start was he sold LED party lamps online. You can still find some of his old stuff on Amazon. And he went from selling party lamps to selling LED lights, Chinese lights. And then he went from that to selling these pipe things. And that's his experience and his understanding, which is nil, really. He doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. And that's the reason there's been over 300 accidents with his stuff. And yeah, I mean, we one, to show you how bulletproof our stuff is, one nerd turned the safety valve off on the jacket on the lower chamber and turned the pump up because he thought it would be better if it was more pressure. And the jacket at 400 psi, you got to remember it was designed to run 50 psi. At 400 psi, it ballooned out, but it didn't rupture. It didn't let any gas out of it. Nobody got hurt. And none of the sight glasses were harmed or came out of it. Even though the jacket ballooned up about 3 or 4 inches wide all the way around it, looked like a big puffy marshmallow on it, it still didn't lose pressure or lose seal. And so that's been the one thing that happened. And that was because the guy who was running it admitted finally during our accident investigation that he had turned off the safety valve, which was meant to, the safety valve after 75 psi opened up, and it would blow outside by a light, by a tube. It would let it outside the building or into a container outside. Anyway, he turned all that off and just let it build up pressure. And at 400, it ballooned out, scared him, but it didn't, I'm sure. So our stuff is very solid. Never been another thing that since then, because that system did not have the computer on it, and he was allowed to change valves. So that was the end of that. We sourced the same valves that they use on nuclear submarines. They're computer controlled throughout the submarine, and they're much higher capacity than we're putting, 45 psi through them, and they're capable of handling 4,500 psi. And they turn the gas off and on via the computer. The computer monitors the system for temperature and pressure and understands what's where and when. And since then, there's been no reported accidents whatsoever. And our big place in Kansas has never had an accident because we ran it. The thing is, our system runs at 30 to 45 psi max, and these other guys that use propane, they use it because it runs at 133 psi, and they can't get a patent or permission to run the propane because it's covered under my patent in the first place, number one. And number two, they can't use anything. But butane, they don't like using it because it's only 30 psi, and they can't use a pump to recover it because my basic patent is if you put gas in a chamber and then let it into another chamber and recover it with a pump. That's my patent. That's my first claim. So they get propane because it's a high enough pressure to hurry their passive system along. But all propane is contaminated with a chemical known as carbonyl sulfide, and it's going to get in there. Even the 99.9% pure stuff has carbonyl sulfide in it. And once you make an extraction and then you use heat to remove the gas, the carbonyl sulfide thermally degrades to hydrogen sulfide. And the hydrogen sulfide is what gives PHO that distinctive flavor and the smell that it has, because there's a little bit of hydrogen sulfide in it, which, if you like it, I guess that's fine. For me, no thanks. I pass on that.
How many of the cannabis molecules have you been able to isolate and dry?
Say again?
How many of the cannabis molecules have you been able to isolate and dry?
Well, I think I've even had already THCO and P and V, and I've had about 130 different terpenes, and I have discovered a way. There's one terpene called hashinine, which they said was only available in crash that had been sitting around for years in very small quantities. And I began thinking about that, and I developed a method, a cryogenic method, to cause the chemicals that are in good oil, leaf oil especially, to generate a lot of hashinine. Hashinine is a golden oil terpene. It's thick. It's very viscous, almost like molasses, and it smells like the best hash you've ever smoked in your life. It smells like hash that you haven't smoked yet, but you sure as fuck want to. There's no THC in it, but it not only does it have that smell, but it tastes wonderful too. And I showed it to a number of people in the perfume business, and they were very interested in it. I'd like to see that happen because if there was a cologne called hash or, or whatever that you could wear, and then the police stop you and they say, "Well, I smell pot," you could just hand the bottle out the window and go, "Yeah, you smell this." That would take a certain amount of power out of the hands of those who do not know how to use power, who abuse it all the time. So, but if you follow this particular process of making the oil produce the hashionine out of a pound of the oil done this way, of course, it takes a year of special kind of cold storage. Uh, you get about maybe quarter ounce or so of hashionine. It's such a beautiful, beautiful oil, and it smells so wonderful. I thought, well, one of these days I'll license that to somebody who wants to follow that down the road. And yeah, that was one of my favorites. The hashionine. Getting, I did a lot of freezing, extracting, terpene catching in a black hole, and vacuum pumping. Maybe 300-400 different ways before I came to this way that produces a lot of hashionine. Maybe I'll sell it to somebody someday and they can carry on making it. But that was a very interesting thing to do, and it was a real eye opener that I could get it. On the Instagram, I've got a little one of these jars that you get like 2 or 3 grams in when you go buy concentrate, and I've got it turned sideways, and you can see it's half full of this really beautiful golden oil, and it's very viscous. That's the stuff. That's the hashionine, and that's a terpene, yeah, and it's thick like molasses. Who would have thunk it, right? So, but I love finding out stuff like that.
Does it actually, like set some endorphins off in your head to where you actually get some kind of a high from it, or does it just smell very good?
No, no, no. There's no high to it, except for you know how they say the taste and the smell are part of the high, right? Well, I'm sure that this smell and taste would be considered part of every really good high. Even though there's no THC in it, you get the baggage without the high. And you know, it's like really well-made rose oil. It feels like you're right in the garden. That's the way hashionine is. It feels like you're just right there in the middle of the freshest, best smelling bud ever. It'd be
Smells like
great to
lights out, huh?
it would be great to have the resources to harvest a lot of that and produce, what, a couple pounds, couple hundred pounds of hashionine. That would be fantastic. A lot of work involved. You got to remember also, hashionine is a terpene, still an alcohol, and still possible to learn which things it would have to be fed to yeast to make it produce hashionine, which is a pregnant project I'm looking at right now. I want to create the cannabinoids and terpenes using yeast and save the trouble of the plants if I can get. I'm getting a couple of small reaction vessels, and I've got the patents for how to produce it and all the different things you have to put in it. So I'm going to play with that the rest of the winter.
Is there a way to extract terpenes from water?
Well, you can dry the water out and just do it mildly, gently, like under a vacuum. Don't get anything hot. You might get some terpenes at the end. I know when people make water hash, bubble hash, a ton of terpenes go into the water. And I had different people say, no. Even Bubble Man, he's said before that he didn't think that was the case. But if you smell the water after somebody did made bubble hash, it's clear it's got terpenes in it. There's no question about it.
Yeah, that's why I asked. To be honest with you, because I was curious if you could reclaim them from that water. A lot of that water is very terpy, and I've asked a couple of extractors that I know if they've ever tried to use their freeze dryer to gently, like you say, kind of, evaporate that water so they could end up with a very terpy powder. Uh, and nobody has given me, yeah, I'll give that a try. Or I've heard of, yeah, maybe, but I don't know anybody with a freeze dryer yet that's willing to give it a go to see if it's possible. But every time I'd make hash, because that's as far as the extraction goes for me. I do a little bit of dry sifting, and I love my bubble hash. But the hydrocarbon side of things, that's way beyond me. Excuse me. But every time I dump that bubble water out, I feed it to my plants. My plants tend to like it. But I always think it's a waste. I'm like, man, that water is so terpy. If there was just a way we could, pull one of these out of there somehow. Uh, but is
when
there
I
one?
first when I first started extracting in Colorado before we came to California, we used to buy the guys who made bubble hash. When they were done, they had this big wet mess of pot left over, and we used to buy it for $5 a kilo from them. Then we would dry it out in a vacuum oven and then extract it. And there was always about 25 or 30% of the total oil content still in it. So we would make oil and sell it back to them.
Nice.
They would always ask us, "Hey, where did you get this oil? This is good stuff." Yeah, it was your bubble hash.
I've never thought about that. I've heard of some people like taking that material and trying to make butter out of it one more time. I've never heard of that. I wouldn't even try to make butter out of it, to be honest with you.
Well, the trichromes are 50% of the oil present in the plant, and the rest of it is in the green in the leaf left over that the trichromes were sitting on. We used to we have a method to shake trichromes off to shake all the trichromes out of a pound in 10 seconds. And we would set those trichromes off to the side, very pure, no green, beautiful trichromes. And then we would take the stuff that was the trichromes was on, which is either green or brown or whatever it was, extract that for the oil, which was the other 50%. We would then put that oil in a stainless steel bowl and cover it with liquid nitrogen. And it would start fracturing like crazy. And you take a baseball bat or an aluminum bat or something, you stick it down in there and you keep grinding it until it looks like really fine flour suspended in water. Then you take that big bowl of trichromes that you've got, that you separated it somehow, and you dump them in with it and stir it up. In that case, the liquid nitrogen is acting like a solvent. And you stir it up for a while, and then you set the bowl out on the porch, and all the nitrogen goes out of it. And what you've got left there is this perfectly mixed hash and oil that you couldn't mix any other way so easily. It mixed perfectly while it was in the liquid of the nitrogen. And then you can just roll those up into temple balls because they're soft the 50 or 60% oil and 40% trichomes. That's usually what I used to do, 60-40 or thereabouts, depending on what people were looking for. But it's a very easy way to make temple balls, no water involved, and it goes very quickly, and you don't lose any terpenes that way. So I'm not a proponent of bubble hash because of that, because you're washing away a lot of the terpenes. You can take a piece of bubble hash and compare it to a piece of our temple ball hash. No comparison. The temple ball hash burns residue free, and it's got all the terpenes in it, and it's just knockout stuff. We could never make it as fast as we could sell it. I mean, we had everybody in the family sitting around rolling these temple balls up. We would make huge bowls of it, and we just couldn't keep up with it. There was never enough, which was good, except for a lot of work.
It's got me thinking of a lot, to be honest with you. I know I kind of asked you this before, but how available is liquid nitrogen? Is that something that somebody like myself
can usually buy it at the library? You can either, a lot of times libraries have it. They don't have it. Your local welding company has it, and it's easy to get. You just got to have a container to go get it in that you're not going to put a lid on, because when it expands, it expands 300 times its own volume. You wouldn't want to put a lid on that, because that would be a bomb waiting for a place to happen. But usually they'll sell you or rent you a doer, which is a container that you can put liquid nitrogen in that's vented, and it'll last for, like, depending on how fast you're using it, it'll last a couple, 2 or 3 days or 4 days, depending on the size you get and how much. I mean, we used to have 2,000-liter to insulated containers full of liquid nitrogen at the plant, when they're full anyway. They're not full right now, but
can't help but wonder too. And I know that I'm dancing around the subject I can't necessarily talk about with you, but when it comes to the sonic shaking there, I can't help but wonder, if it's a shaking of the screen, or if it's a sonic, actually sound shaking of the material, and B, if temperature's a key factor.
man, I'm starting to lose you guys. I didn't hear almost anything of what you just said.
Oh, I was wondering about the shake method there, the sonic method. I couldn't help but wonder if it was a shaking of the screen, like a sonic shaking of the screen, or if it was almost like a sonic shaking of the material, so sound actually shaking material itself, and if in that process, if temperature was a key factor.
Well, we had a automatic shaking machine that had screens down to a couple of microns. So by the time the stuff got to the bottom of where that screen was, we get very pure material. But we'd like to have about 150 or 200 pounds at a time thrown in it. It's big.
I guess that's be my next obstacle there. Is I just will probably never have that kind of material laying around to test some shit like that. These are dreams, Indra. These are dreams. I can only imagine working with the
Yeah.
numbers that you've seen in your life.
Well, we're gonna our plant in Kansas is gonna fire up. There's people who are buying the whole thing, cool kit and caboodle, and Kansas sooner or later will go legal. And when it does, there's one factory in the middle of the country that can extract 2,000 pounds out of whack. But imagine that'll become the key thing.
I was just reading it in chat at me, Stymie there. Somebody was asking about the mic. So, have you actually picked out your strains for your grow yet, Indra? I mean, is that too far in ahead to even think about yet?
No, not all of them yet. Like I said, people are giving me seeds, and I'm looking at all the seeds.
That Vietnam seeds there. Is it all? Are they all one strain, or are they like a mixed bag?
Well, there's about 40 strains so far.
Oh, I'm talking about the ones you brought back from Vietnam there.
Every single one of those seeds is
It should be some amazing stuff there. I mean, what do you expect to see? I was going to ask you, what did you expect to see out of some of the stuff you brought back out of them strains there that you don't necessarily see currently in the cannabis market?
Guess that remains to be seen. I should be getting a lot of Thai blood and a lot of Afghani blood.
Should be amazing. It should be some amazing stuff there. It's almost sad that you're gonna only work it for one season, one round there. It's heartbreaking that it's not a project that you could wean out to some really wean winners there.
But dude, I'm getting old. And
well, you've definitely lived probably about 5 of my lifetimes, that's for sure. We talked about that before. I mean, and I was even talking about it last night, to be honest with you, Indra, with my guest. We were talking about some of the older people that we're able to speak with and hear some of the solar stories. And I was telling her about being uh, how much of an honor it was to be able to speak with you, how much I enjoyed speaking with you, and how much when I sit back and listen to all the stories you tell and all the places you've been and all the things you've done, it just makes me feel like so very insignificant in a lot of the things I've done so far. And makes it's really every time I hear you, I get you on and hear a lot of these great stories. It's kind of like a fuel, if you will. I might not taking a lot out of, like, say, the extraction side of things, but it does give me a fuel to want to get out there and get some more things done and see a lot more shit. Because I'm always jealous of all the stuff that I've heard and tales you've told. Uh, I like and some of them I don't even want to mention, like you said, like some of the things you've seen in Vietnam, but some of the other adventures you've had, going around the world, India, Vietnam. I mean, there's had to be some cool things you've seen here, but just traveling the world in general, and you know, it's a fire for me to, you're 75, I'm 48. That's 32 years. I can still get out there and hopefully try to get some shit done that could at least compare in a microscopic kind of way. For sure.
But you got to remember, I was traveling the world before all of the bullshit hit the fan, and people weren't. I mean, they didn't have X-rays at the airport or anything. We used to fly to India, go to Manali, buy a small suitcase full of soft brown finger hash in Manali, which came from farther up the hill actually. Fly back to Bombay, get on the plane, Bombay. Nobody's asking any questions. Flew to Vancouver. At Vancouver, you get off the plane and you've got to take it through to Seattle. But what they do is you're landing at one side of the airport where international flights come in, and they give you your luggage and everything, and they tell you go clear across the airport to the other side is where the American Airlines will take you, fly you to Seattle, and in Seattle you'll go through customs. So we're walking to the other side of the airport, and about halfway there, I look up and I say to my guy who's with me, "Hey John, that looks like the front door, isn't it?" He says, "Yeah, it looks like it." So we stroll over to it. Nobody's watching anything. We go out. There's taxi cabs at the corner. We hop a taxi cab and tell him to take us back to Seattle. Taxi cab goes across the bridge. The guy at the bridge says, "Where are you coming from?" You say, "A day of shopping in Vancouver." "Okay." Boom, let you through. And so here we had this suitcase full of this Manali hash back in Seattle all of a sudden. And we, at the same time, realized, hey, this is a good path. And so for a couple of years, we went back and forth like fucking crazy to Manali, getting suitcases, coming back, walking off the plane in Vancouver, walking out the front door of the airport halfway, never showing up in Seattle on the plane. And we used to get John's girlfriend to come over and pick us up in front of the airport. And we would just all drive back over to Seattle. And so you couldn't do that again. I mean, the whole thing's a lot more paranoid and freakazoid now, and you'd never make it. I mean, you couldn't leave India now because they're looking for all that when you leave India now. And I mean, we used to go to Amsterdam and score a bunch of ecstasy, or MDA actually, and bring it back to India. And you're not going to do that anymore. And they weren't looking for things. I mean, once it was in Amsterdam, they wanted me to bring them some saffron, which is the precursor to making ecstasy. So when I was in India, I bought 6 bottles of it, and we took the chemical labels off of it. It was just brown glass bottles, and we had the Indian guy print up a label saying it was massage oil. And when we got to Amsterdam, the guy at the airport took the bottle out and he looked at it. And he said, "What is it?" And I said, "It's massage oil." So it says right on there. So he held it up to the light and looked in it, and he couldn't see anything in it because the saffron was light yellow and the bottle was brown, so it just looked clear. So he stuck it back in the bag and said, "Okay, go ahead." And we could buy it in India for about 600 rupees a bottle, and sell it in Amsterdam for 6,000 guilders. So it made it a fun thing to do. You had to go to Amsterdam anyway to get a visa. So while you were there, why not take some whatever it is they're looking for there from India, where you can walk in any chemistry store in India and order everything except maybe an atomic bomb. And they're like, you walk in and say, hey, I want this. And they go, how many? That's their answer to you.
I just wanted to say real quick that I have been shot at Dr. Lightyear, but being shot at one instance is a lot different than being in Vietnam and not being able to be in being in your reality. There's a huge difference.
I loved Amsterdam. That was where I first smoked DMT. And it was the craziest experience ever. I mean, we had gone to a couple of ayahuasca parties in Amsterdam that somebody was putting on, and I went to one with my friends, and they limited us to how much you could drink, and so it was kind of a mild high for me, and I wasn't so excited about it. So he told the people that were running it that I thought it was too mild to be worthwhile to go to. So they agreed to give me a mega dose. And we went that night, but at the same time in the building, there was a tantric sex class being held. And this beautiful giant redhead came up to me outside and asked me if I wanted to go to the tantric sex class with her and be her partner. So she won out on that. I missed on that ayahuasca party. And then the next day, we went to a friend's house and he said, ayahuasca's okay. He goes, but you got to smoke some DMT. That's the thing. So I was like, well, okay, I'll try it. And gave me a pipe with a pretty good sized little chunk in it. I mean, it looked like a quarter gram or something of this white crystal. And they put fire on it, and I started inhaling. And I was about halfway through the inhaling part, and I was so fucking stoned. I couldn't see straight. I mean, I transitioned to a new place. The old room disappeared. Everyone disappeared. I looked down at my mouth, and there was that pipe still there. And I finished taking a token. I let it out, and I was all these little green people and this big, tall green goddess type woman were there, and they were all. I was like, "Where the fuck am I?" And they were all, "You're gonna be okay. You're all right. This is just a place that you can't see normally, but we're always around and we're always here." And it was crazy because everybody had a mandala above them and below them, mandala over their head, one under their feet. The energy was going from the mandala back and forth through them. And this is what I was seeing while I was smoking the DMT. And it was pretty amazing experience to see that and experience it, because all the mandalas were different, and I don't know, it's crazy looking at it all. It didn't last very long. I mean, 5 minutes later, I was down again, but it made quite an impression on me. I've never forgotten that particular experience. I've even dreamt it a few times over the years.
I've never had that kind of experience. I've always wanted to try DMT or Alaska, but I've never been able to come across it yet. But I'm definitely open-minded when it comes to it, for sure.
Well, my very favorite thing was mescaline, and mescaline was a whole another place besides DMT and ayahuasca and LSD. Mescaline was very visual. Uh, if you colors would, like if you had a plastic cup and it was red, the color would run off onto the floor and mix with everything down below. And uh, plus, you had some kind of a Zen connection with animals and bugs. Um, I put a 4x8 plank on some rocks down by some ants while I was on a wrestling trip. And after a while of watching them, I asked them to come out of the hole, and a whole lot of them came out and looked at me. They were moving their antenna back and forth. And they brought up some babies and showed them to me, and then they took them back down the hole. And so it happened over a few hours that we were in commune with each other. And, yeah, mescaline, it was the most crazy thing. I mean, I don't know if you would say it was true hallucinations. It was true wiping away of the hallucination that we live all the time, instead exposing some of the truths of nature and what's going on. Everything is alive, and everything has a soul, and everything has a heart. And you can see it sometimes when you enter those states of high, when you take some certain drugs. Mescaline was always my favorite one. Real eye opener.
Had some fun times on it myself. I've experimented a little bit there. Good times. 420 here in chat. I know you've told this story before, and if you'd like to tell it again, that's great. But I enjoyed it. Would like to know where you got this green named Indra from.
Wait, what?
Where did you get the name Indra from?
I was working at a free hospital in India, and eventually I ended up running the children's recovery ward for heart patients. And I went there on a 90-day exchange thing, but I was so moved by what was going on with the children that I ended up staying. And after about 5 or 6 months, they could never say my name. They would just holler at me, doctor. And I would tell them my name was John Davis, but these kids were in South India, and they speak Malayalam and a few other esoteric Indian languages down there. And they couldn't say John Davis very well. So they started calling me Dr. Indra because they could say Indra. And one day I went in, and the nurses had a name badge all made up for me with a picture of Indra on one side, one of those ones that they'll carve out. And the name on the other side, it said Dr. Indra. And down below it, in really tiny letters, it said Dr. John Davis. So anyway, those kids were the ones that named me. It wasn't me. I didn't pick it as a nickname. And it sort of stuck. A lot of people, you know, a lot of people went to that hospital over the years. And during Swami's birthday, for instance, sometimes 2.5 or 3 million people would show up. And when you've got that many people, a lot of them end up going to the hospital for one reason or another. And Swami used to tell the big crowds like that to go to the hospital and if they had an injury of some sort and see me because he would be there in my hands and heal them. So it was quite a lot of people during birthday time. I would see 50 people a day, 7 days a week. It's hard to see that many people and do any kind of manipulation on them. And, it was pretty crazy. My hands used to swell up at night like a football. And by the morning, the swelling would go down again. And I would see Swami come out of the temple, out of the mandir, and I had a letter in my pocket that said I was in pain. And I brought it one morning, and he walked out, saw it, and he looked at me and he said pain because he knew what was in the letter. He didn't have to see it. It was, So he said pain, and I said yes, Swami. And he said, okay, wait. And about 6 weeks went by, and this one of the guys who was one of his main devotees, his name is Colonel Jagarao, hurt his knee getting out of his car one morning. He slipped on a polished surface and hurt his knee. So they came and got me at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, "You got to come help because tomorrow's the big celebration." And Swami, they want Colonel Jagarao to be okay. I went to see, and his knee was swollen up like a football. So I started working the fascia open on both sides. The swelling was going down, and the room got quiet. And I turned around and looked, and it was Swami standing behind me. He'd walked in, and he asked me if I needed any help. And I said, yes. So he waved his hand in a circle, and a leaf appeared on it, shaped like a heart. It's called a bilva leaf. It's a tree in India, and it's shaped exactly like a heart, a Valentine's heart, not a human heart. And on that leaf, in the middle of it, was a pile of lotion. And like when you squeeze toothpaste out of a tube, right at the end, there's a last little tip that sort of bends over. And he materialized it on his hand, and I could see that little tip bending over like someone just squirted it on that leaf, who we couldn't see. And he handed it to me, and he told me to use that to rub on his knee. So I sat it down, and I rubbed a bunch of it on my palms, and I rubbed it all over his knee. And he laid back and went to sleep, and his knee started swelling, started going down. But what was really crazy about it is my hand swellings went down, and I never had pain with them again, even though I was seeing almost people every single day. And it was that material that was on that leaf that healed me as well as Colonel Jagarao. That's why he told me to wait. He knew in the future that he was going to hurt his knee and that he would heal him. And so Swami always used to say he likes to fill every train up before it left the station. So I guess that's what was happening. Anyway, it really, my hands became perfect after that. Never hurt me anymore. I was able to abuse them quite a bit. Anyway, it's kind of a crazy story, but true.
Had to be rough on them hands. I like that. Uh, all them years. So, do you have terrible arthritis these days from it?
No, not at all. In fact, my hands are they're straight as an arrow, and they're very supple. I can touch my little finger, the next finger, the next one, the next one, and then the thumb very rapidly in a rhythmic turning on both hands, forward and backward. That's because 37 years I did that practice. And so I was to the point where I had manipulated so many people's soft tissue that I could squeeze a tennis ball until it popped because of the strength in my hands from manipulating soft tissue. Especially living in India, where the soft tissue that's underneath the skin on Indians who are very suppressed was thicker than a diving suit, much different than American bodies. So anyway, yeah, you know, even now when I shake people's hands, they always do a double take. That at my age, I'm that strong. They always say that, and then I always go, "Smell isn't everything."
That's funny. That's funny. So, what all can you heal with those hands, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, the big thing people we always in about 10 minutes on the table, I can increase your breath 100% by manipulating the fascia and the soft tissue around your rib cage and your diaphragm and freeing it up so that you can take a full breath. When you take a full breath and you're laying down, it should look like an ocean wave coming in. It should come from your chest down and then out at your pubis at the end of the muscles and the soft tissue that's there. And so it should look like that. And that's the only way you're going to get a full breath. You can't get a lung breath or you can't get a diaphragm breath. You've got to be able to get both of them in conjunction with one another before your breath really works. And so when you come to me, I reset that so that you can breathe again, like when you were just born. And I've done it a couple 100,000 times over the years. So what I can tell you about it is it's a very freeing experience, and usually people who I've done it with, as soon as they take that first real breath in both sides at once, tears come in their eyes, and they turn and look at me, and I can see them crying, and I know that they're crying because they just realized that what they had been doing up till now wasn't breathing at all. They had been harming themselves, and they had been through some suppression that they took on, like someone standing on one foot yelling in your ear, you can't do anything about it, or authoritarian parents, or a father, whatever that inhibits your breath, because a lot of things as you're growing up can cause you to hold your breath when they happen and inhibit your breathing. So whenever you release somebody's full diaphragm and chest, it's always an awakening. It's always quite an event. It always. Uh, I would have sometimes people would call me 10 years later and go, "Remember that first session?" After I already saw 150,000 people. Now I probably don't, but I know what happens at the end of the first session. You get to breathe again. And when you can breathe, great joy comes in your body. That's one of the things I can do with my hands. And then there's a bunch of other things that go along with it. But in an hour, I can accomplish that in anybody, make them breathe again. It's almost, a lot of people think it's a miracle. When I was doing the factory in Kansas, when we were building it, uh, some of the local people asked me what I was doing in India. I told them, they wondered if I could help them. And pretty soon, everybody all over town knew about it, and people were asking me all the time to be able to get sessions. Of course, we were building a factory, and so I would take one day a week, and I went to a friend's office in town and practiced, and I would see, 15 people or so. Johnny?
Uh, I was just reading Arthritis 25 said any psychoactive substance can trigger the response. Just the stronger may be more likely to create the genes.
You're gonna have to say that again. I didn't get it.
They were saying that a psychoactive substance can trigger the same response. Just the more likely if you have that gene set.
Psychoactive
I was
stuff,
trying.
but well, just to some extent, a psychoactive substance can trigger a response. But here's the story: the response is stored in your soft tissue. You stored it there when you couldn't deal with the situation. A psychoactive substance might bring it back up so you can look at it again. But the way to really deal with it is let it out of your soft tissue. And I would put my ability to let someone release out of soft tissue up against any psychoactive substance that exists. I mean, I did several hundred thousand people for 37 years, and I can appreciate psychoactive substances. I've worked a lot of times along with it hand in hand, especially in India. But the true release of those things is to discharge it out of your connective tissue. You store it there. It's like a memory. You connective tissue when you learn a martial art. It's memory that you stored in your connective tissue. Not just muscle memory. It's connective tissue memory. That and that's where you move from, where all the real power comes from. It doesn't come from muscle. It comes from connective tissue in your body and how well you coordinate your muscle tissue along with it. And you know, anybody could tell me that, but then you would come and lay down on the table here, and I would make you breathe again. And psychedelic substances are not going to make you breathe again. It's not going to have that effect on it. You're going to have a high from it. You're going to experience old trauma and so forth, but it's not going to open you up to breathing again. And the kind of work that I do does that. But once the breath is open again, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's available to you. You start realizing a lot of things when you can breathe again. It's like someone taking handcuffs off you that have been on you for years and years and years. And I've been doing it for a very long time, and I've never once had anybody say anything but that was fucking amazing.
So is it something that's like ever closing? Uh, you can open it back up, but after you open it back up, is it something that it's just kind of dwindling, an effect that's dwindling at that point, and that they'd have to see
But
somebody like
you,
yourself to open it up again?
you're not opening it up again. When you get somebody to discharge it out of their soft tissue, their posture will change. They'll stand up. They'll listen differently. They'll act differently. It goes away. I mean, you'd have to get hurt again in the same kind of way before you would get back into that. Once you get your soft tissue properly balanced and aligned, um, and you've gotten rid of the most, or if not all, of the emotional release that you've stored in it, it's not going to come back again. It's not how it works. You have to get hit by a bus again or something. I've done a lot of people over the years, and I even have people 30 years later write me letters saying, "Hey, you changed my life. Uh, I'm never going to forget it. Thank you very much. I appreciate you so much." Um, they remember it from 30 years ago. And I know it's a
So
good thing because I've been doing it.
I'm sure it is. I'm just curious to like. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to come see you up there on the mountain. So, if I were interested in, you know, utilizing this technique, how would I find somebody?
I couldn't tell you that. I don't know anybody else. What I do is what I do. And, you know, my whole life up till now led me to do what I do. And so finding somebody else that could duplicate that would be quite an anomaly. It would be strange.
Well, I wasn't for sure if it was a technique that you could teach on, you know, pass on to somebody, or if it was something that was special to yourself.
Well, my son knows some, and over the years, I've had 25 or 30 students who ardently and diligently practice it, but they're all in other countries. None of them live here in the USA. Um, had a lot of foreign students who taken it back to their countries, but you couldn't really call it anything. It's a culmination of events in my life that led me to the understanding. I knew that breathing was one of the most important parts of life. And so I spent a lot of time studying all the different kinds of breathing, yogic breathing, pranic breathing, uh, the different kinds of breathing techniques, and expanding breathing, Chinese methods of breathing, the Tao. And anyway, got to meet a lot of people and got their hits on it, and I started developing it until I realized I could, in about 5 minutes, open one side of your chest and in 5 minutes the other side, and that you would go through this intense reconfiguration of your emotions, having had it done. So you'd have to get yourself a Greyhound bus ticket and come here to get what I'm telling you.
I'm wanting to. That's why I asked where I could find somebody like that. I mean, it sounds very appealing. It sounds very appealing.
Look, in one move, I can make one move on the front side of your body on your chest, and your breath will increase greatly in that 1 minute, and you'll look at me and a tear will form in your eye. That's how potent it is. One move can cause the beginning of the unraveling of the emotional net that you're tied up in, that everybody's got that they're tied up in. So it's probably
I
gonna
don't know if you
die
can
with
even
me.
call it a net. It's a vault. It isn't
Yeah.
even a net. It's a vault.
Well, it's a thing, and you'd have to be going down the very same path that I did for a lot of years in order to pick it up and understand it.
I'm very open-minded. That's why I tend to ask them a lot of questions. I know there's answers out there. I'm still seeking so much knowledge in so many different ways.
Last year, greatest violinist in France, flew from Japan to here and stayed with me for 2 weeks so that I could loosen his arms up and make him okay again. He called me from Japan and said that he was beginning to tighten up and he was getting more and more difficult to play his concerts. So he flew from there, stayed with me for 2 weeks. Then he went back to playing concerts everywhere. I get, messages from him all the time telling me how wonderful it is to be free again. I still got a lot of different things that I do in the work with people. I mean, I'm not going to give up doing anything until I'm being shoved in a box or a dirt nap or something. I don't have any plans for dying. Of course, nobody ever does, right?
No, it always sneaks up.
Some people do. I see a lot of people commit suicide these days. Like why? I don't know, because some things just take care of themselves. Dying's one of them. No need to get in a rush.
For me, myself, I've realized that, and now I've realized that the last few years, so I try to, what I've learned is to express, gratitude and let people know how I feel about them all the time instead of holding those emotions in and instead of not being able to pass that on at any one given moment. I want it that when that time comes, I want everybody to know exactly what they meant to me.
Yeah, I gave up trying to tell people how it is and how to go about it because nobody, people, if they can't listen, they can't listen. Doesn't matter what you're trying to tell them. People aren't prepared to listen. So I always wait before I tell anybody anything till it feels like they're really hungry to get something out of me. Then I'll dispense a piece of knowledge. But otherwise, my opinion is out of all the vices, the worst vice is advice.
The worst advice is advice, depending on.
Say what?
I said the worst vice is the advice, isn't it? Yeah, you're trying to say depending on it.
Yeah. Well,
Depending on
advice is
advice.
bad because this advice is always like somebody else's feelings. I match up to yours and so didn't necessarily follow. You got to listen to everything and distill your own pot of soup out of it. Don't don't pick any one person as being the source of everything. I mean, look at the number of crazies out there who have thwarted and twisted Christianity until now they don't want to wear a mask because it's their right and Jesus will protect them. Hello, you know, you don't want to get in that position. When when my ex-wife Annie told me that she didn't believe in the virus, I said, "You need to tell those 150,000 people who died." She goes, "That's all a hoax." And I said, "Sweetheart, um, you're wrong on that, but I'm not going to harass you about it because I know you had a triple aneurysm and you're thinking the way you're you're thinking now because you're a different person. So if you think that's what's going on, I'm all for you. Everybody's got their own little thing about what the hell's going on. It's karma. Karma is a wonderful, wonderful thing. It gives you back 100% of what you put out.
That it does. That it does. It's a weird cycle. I can't never figure it out. I've been putting it. Sometimes you can figure. Sometimes I can't figure out why. I've been on the right path for a long time, but sometimes karma will still throw you a monkey wrench that you can't figure out why.
Well, that's probably because you got old karma that you can't remember still working out. You'll be able to tell when you're back around to the good stuff because all this kind of really neat stuff will start happening. Wishes coming true, so forth, so on.
So I guess that's a good question. In your opinion, how big is the circle of karma? I mean, things can bad karma from earlier in your early in existence come around later in life to where, say that there can be an inner karma circle where it comes around often. But yeah, like you say, um, is there such a portion of karma that comes around kind of like Nibiru? You know what I mean? It's just that one thing you did that's just coming around to smack you every 3,000 years or something.
Well, it just comes the same way that you put it out. Maybe in your last life you were, cutting people's heads off or something. Who knows? But I know if you stay on the trail long enough, pretty soon you run into the place where you started staying on the trail. And that's when things can get pretty wonderful. Look, I'm 75, still alive. I had the universe gift to me the idea of uh, gas extraction way back in 1969. I think the powers that be gave it to me because they knew I wouldn't keep my mouth shut. And it's kind of worked out that way. I originally gave BHO away, and I do have patents now, but my patents are based on the equipment and scientific process. So our machines, you extract, and at the end of the story, you got 0 parts per million, and you made one extract that came out that way, and you're ready to use it. You're ready to commercially use the output. CO2, fucking giant mess. Black tar, then you got extract the tar with ethanol, and yeah, I don't like
In a
big
way,
messes.
though, isn't
When you get done,
the whole the whole patent process is, in my opinion, it's a way to claim the idea, but in a way, like you've talked about, you patent, the equipment and the scientific process. But you know, moreover, you've orphan sourced that knowledge, which is priceless. You know what I mean? That can't be ever paid back. The amount of knowledge people have received and being able to take and move on. I mean, that's gotta make you feel good as well. Not only that is the people that it's helped in other ways. The extraction process has helped in other ways. It's gotta make you feel good in that aspect.
yeah, there's going to be some new surprises this year once I get my little laboratory up and running and start turning out oil from yeast. We'll see what happens. You can even make cannabinoids that don't exist yet that way. So it'd be some fun to experiment with. I'm just trying to have fun before I die. You know what I mean? I don't want to just wind down and be sitting on a retirement home on the I could have porch with the rest of them. I could have, I should have, and I would have if I would have known. This is what was waiting for me. No way. I'm not, I'm not interested in that ending. Uh, when I get to the point where I feel like I'm really going to shuffle off the buffalo, I want to take a giant hit of mescaline and, maybe some real MDA, go out that way from experiencing all the love and feelings of it in the universe. Good time to let go of the body, eh? Better than a traffic accident or fire or whatever. A lot of different ways to go, but Benny, my son, told me that when I go at 122, that my great great grandchildren, of course, will be around my bedside. But well, you kids get off my lawn.
Yeah, I feel this very same way about life there. I don't want to live with a bunch of regrets. I'm trying to most definitely cross off a lot of them. And if you're ever to see me in person, I actually have a fascination for skulls, to be honest with you. And some people may think it's like a evil thing, but it's not. It's not at all. Use when I see them things, they're a constant reminder of that life's short. I shouldn't be putting things away like you say that I don't want to take with me. Regrets that I want to take with me, and it's a constant reminder that, of people that I've lost that have died with regrets, and a constant reminder of just get out there and do this.
No, Eric.
Actually, and this might be a little bit awkward, but I actually have a tattoo right here. It kind of goes along with what you're saying. It's a, it's on my leg. I don't know. I'll show you here. But what it is uh, right there. And what that is, it's actually a skull face made of skulls. And what that kind of represents to me is exactly what we're talking about here. To me, that's the mass. Yeah, if you don't chase those dreams and goals, that's the mask that you're gonna have to wear after you pass on this through this vessel of the regrets and stuff that the burdens that you didn't you carrying with you. And each one of those skulls that build up that mask is a regret. I could have, I should have, I, you know, something that I didn't do. And that right there is a constant reminder for me every time I look down at that thing that, you know, I don't want to wear that mask. I don't want to have those regrets. I don't want to carry that negativity with me to the next place, the next transition. So I kind of get that. I'm still working on my character as I go, for sure.
Just figure out who you are, and once you understand you, you'll fit in and understand everybody else. No matter how abrasive they might seem to the rest of the world, you'll get it. Anyway, hey, listen, I don't know what time it is there, but it's past my bedtime here. So
Yes, sir. It's pushing
bag
3 o'clock.
off.
If that means it's got to be midnight there. So yeah, it's probably pretty late for you. I greatly appreciate your time, Indra, more than you'll ever know. And I do hope to be able to get you back on the show because I am very thankful for this time. It always we I know you don't get to see chat, but you've had a lot of great compliments. If you go back and watch this, said they've given you tons of props throughout this whole thing. We're always grateful to get you on and hear your stories and what you're up to. So I'm glad you reached out and gave me another opportunity to get you back on. I can't wait to hear uh, how things are going for you in the near future.
Well, I'm for sure gonna be working my butt off next summer, growing a bunch of plants. So you'll probably be able to get me back on here and there.
Well, I hope it's way before next summer.
Well,
Way
I mean,
before.
I'm just saying, but yeah, anytime you want to have me on there to grill me about stuff, feel free to let me know.
I will. I will. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you again.
Yeah, I'm definitely. Well, there's my ocean scene. I'm just a black blob down at the bottom of the screen. Oh, there's the rest of it. Not enough light on me to actually see. Yeah, there you go. There's the ugly old part. All right. Well, don't do anything I wouldn't do, group. And if you do, name it after me.
Will do. Will do.
All right. It says my internet connection is unstable. So I'm going to sign up and go to bed. Have a good one. And I hope I didn't bore everyone. And see you another time.
We look forward to it, my friend. We look forward to it. You have a great night.
All right.
Hope you guys have
Night,
enjoyed
folks.
tonight's episode. Good night, John. Hope you guys have enjoyed tonight's episode. Still 50 people watching. You guys know the deal. Since I've learned my lessons with the copyright, I will shut down this episode so it can be saved and not yanked down by YouTube from copyright stupidity. So I will see you guys in a few minutes in the rabbit hole. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully, you guys will check in a few minutes when I re-upload. But if not, I appreciate you guys' time. Do something nice for somebody. Random acts of kindness do change lives. I've said it once. I'll say it a
Send
million
me
times.
cash.
Very true. Very true. In fact, if you look at chat there, they actually were agreeing on that. They were saying that we had somebody's got to help hook you up. So somebody's got to send you something. So I wouldn't be surprised if something does turn up in your mailbox for sure, my friend.
All right. Good night.
Good night, Indra. See you guys